Hello everyone and welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo and today we are talking about 4 movies that debuted on Netflix in April here in the US. They are Thunder Force, Stowaway, Things Heard and Seen, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines. 4 very, very different movies. I like to do this once a month. I'll give you a taste of what's on Netflix because there's so many different tastes when it comes to film. Some people are looking for comedy, some people are looking for horror, some people are looking for action, and Netflix has it all. And this crop of films especially really encompasses every genre. You have a movie that's a action comedy, you have a movie that is a space thriller drama, you have a slow burn horror film, and you have a really fun animated film for the family. Now, some of these movies definitely stand out in their genres more than others. Starting with Thunder Force, and I think this is the one that has had the most backlash, just people feeling a little underwhelmed by it. This is another team up between director Ben Falcone and his wife Melissa McCarthy, who is the star of this film, along with Octavia Spencer. Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone have done a lot of films together. Tammy, Life of the Party, just to name a few, and they have not really been that well received. The movie is about 2 young girls who always dream about becoming superheroes together. They part ways. Later on in their adult lives, they run into each other, they become superheroes, and they attempt to save the world. You know, that's a basic premise, and because the premise is so basic, they really need to do something to elevate this basic premise, and that comes with the action and the comedy, and they don't really master either element. The action's weak, it's stuff we've seen before. There are some gags that are, you know, a little amusing, but they're more amusing for the comedic aspect, and then the comedy, it's not that strong. You know, there is a joke that hits, but for every joke that hits, there's about 9 that misses. We'll talk about a film later in the video where I think out of every 10 jokes, 9 land and 1 doesn't. This is the opposite, where 1 lands and 9 don't. And I think that's a really big problem when you are doing an action comedy. When the action isn't strong, you have to be able to make up for it with the comedy, and this doesn't really do a good job in doing so. Again, the track record between Ben Falcone and Melissa McCarthy's team-ups have not been great, but there are some merits. Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer do give their all to these roles. The script doesn't allow them to do much, but with what they have, they do a serviceable job. They're 2 of the best actresses working today. It's not really a surprise. Then you have Jason Bateman, who just shows up in this film in a hilarious supporting role. He is the best part of this film. He plays a man with crab claws. He's sort of a villain, but he's also a hero. He's a love interest to one of the main heroes. It's very unclear sometimes which side he stands with, but it's really endearing to see him play this really funny crab-clawed character.
It's surprising because I don't have a sense of smell that good ever since the accident.
Unfortunately, they just don't have him in enough of the film to make up for all the rest of it. By the end of the film, even his stuff gets a little old after a little while. I think it's just one of those films that doesn't really make it to 100% on any singular individual aspect. So when it all comes together, it makes it seem even worse and even messier, even clunkier, even flatter. It's one of those movies that had some promise behind it, but at the end of the day, it's just a little forgettable. It is not a recommendation for me. The next movie we're talking about is Stowaway, directed by Joe Penna, starring Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, Shamir Anderson, and Toni Collette. Now, this is very interesting because those are the 4 stars in the film, and those are the only stars in the film. There is no other ensemble aside from them. They do talk to people on their phones, but you don't hear the other voices on the other line. So it is just these 4, and these 4 have to carry the entire film. The film is about a crew that goes up in space. They are in their ship, and then they discover they have a stowaway on board. The stowaway doesn't know how he got there. The characters don't know how they got there. The audience doesn't know how he got there. But they learn how to basically bring the stowaway into their unit, and they all get along. And then they realize their oxygen supply is running low, and they have to deal with that very, very big challenge and obstacle. The whole film's set in the confines of the ship itself. In the 3rd act, they do go beyond the ship, outside the ship, but you know, the majority of the film is set just in discussions inside this ship, and it's really intriguing to see what 4 actors can bring to a whole 2-hour runtime when it's just 4 actors sitting in a ship together discussing their next move. I think one of the issues that this film runs into is the fact that this stowaway is such a big part of the opening half of this film, but they don't really explain fully how he got there. They don't really flesh out exactly what his whole deal is, why he's on the ship, and they don't ever find those answers, and it's a little unsatisfying considering the whole movie is called Stowaway, is about this stowaway. I love films that are ambiguous to a degree, but with so much runtime and only 4 people in a room being able to have a conversation, I feel like we would have had some of those questions answered, and I feel like that's one of the answers that the audience really wanted that we never really got. I will say I did really like the third act. That is really where the action really amps up to another degree. You know, instead of just talking about what they're going to do, they actually try to go about doing it, and it provides some really suspenseful, tense moments. I actually really like the ending. I think it ends on a note that is bittersweet, but is fitting for this story being told. But I have family members that didn't like the ending. They liked the more slow-paced beginning of the film more than the ending. And I think that's just what film does. It has some divisiveness. Some people are going to like certain aspects, some people aren't. This is a very slow burn. So if you have the patience for it, I say definitely check it out, especially if you're a space fan. There's some really good production design that goes into designing the ship, especially since most of the film is taking place inside the ship rather than outside of it. The visual effects are great when they do go outside into the space. It's just a really well-made film that was not particularly interesting to me until the end, and even then there were some questions left unanswered that didn't fully satisfy me. So for me, I wasn't the hugest fan of Stowaway, but I do think there are people who are going to really appreciate it, especially with this cast. They're all really, really great actors, and they do give a lot of amazing emotional resonance to the film. There's so many space movies out there, so some space movies are going to get lost in the shuffle, and I do see over time this movie might get lost in the shuffle. It's not going to be one of the tentpole space movies since there have been so many and they constantly produce them every single year, but this is a pretty good space movie, and I think fans of science fiction, fans of thrillers, they may not be fully satisfied by this film, but I think it is a good enough film to sit down, watch, enjoy the visuals, and enjoy this cast and all the dialogue between them. The next film, speaking of slow burns, is a slow burn horror called Things Heard and Seen, directed by Sherry Springer Berman and Robert Pulcini, starring Amanda Seyfried and James Norton, along with supporting performances from Natalia Dyer from Stranger Things and Yes God Yes, Karen Allen, famously from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and F. Murray Abraham, famously from Amadeus, and so many other great films. Things Heard and Seen is about a woman, husband, and daughter who move into this house. It's your classic haunted house thing. They don't know what's up with the house, but the house is a little spooky. They see some ghosts, and then everything unravels from there. This is a film that has a really strong cast, so that does a lot of the work for them already. Unfortunately, this film is even a slower burn than Stowaway, and I honestly was on board with their slower burn horror film until they started to go the cheap route of jump scares. Some people love jump scares, but if you're gonna make a film that's so jump scare heavy, like an Insidious, like a The Conjuring, there are movies that do it effectively because they really jump all in with the jump scares, no pun intended. In this film, there are occasional jump scares, but they don't really commit fully to those jump scares, so they happen every once in a while. They feel a little off with the rest of the story being told. Sometimes it's unclear really what direction they wanted to go with in terms of the horror itself, and it is labeled as a slow burn horror thriller film. So, we do get some slow burn, we get some thrills, we get some horror, but they don't really have one singular vision that they are committing to. Like I said, the cast is great. Amanda Seyfried is one of the most talented actresses working today that I think is still a little bit underappreciated. She was just nominated for an Oscar for Mank. She's been great since she started in films like Mean Girls. She's been great in Jennifer's Body, another horror film that I really enjoy. She's really impressing me in everything she's been doing lately, and I think this is no exception. I think she's really good, and she is the standout of this film. This film is full of very unlikable characters, and I think when you have a slow burn narrative, and on top of that you have characters that just aren't particularly likable, it can really drag the whole thing down. It's one of those films that starts off strong, committing to a singular artistic vision, committing to that real slow burn horror, but then it just kind of derails by the end. It doesn't know really what it wants to be. It's one of those films that it's hard to recommend just because I didn't love it, but there are people who probably will dig it. That's the thing with horror itself, is that it is so subjective. Horror especially. You have people who love the jump scare stuff. You have people who love the slow burn stuff. Unfortunately, it doesn't really thrive in either direction, and that's the problem. I just don't think it all comes together in a really complete and focused way. So Things Heard and Seen is not necessarily a recommendation for me, but Amanda Seyfried is great, and if you want to see her in a horror film, I recommend checking out Jennifer's Body. It was panned by some critics when it came out, but it has found a cult following. I discovered it for the first time in Halloween of 2020, and I'm a big fan. So if you want to see Amanda Seyfried in a great horror film, I recommend checking that one out. The last film we will be talking about is The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and you can see with this smile on my face that I am a big fan of this movie. This is directed by Mike Rianda, his feature film directorial debut, and he actually stars as the brother in this film. He voices the brother. He is hilarious as the voice of the brother.
Hi, would you like to talk to me about dinosaurs? No. Okay, thank you.
This film is about a dysfunctional family that winds up in the middle of a robot uprising on the middle of their road trip. It sounds like a crazy premise, and it is. And that's what I love first and foremost about this movie, is just how crazy it is, how bonkers it is, and how much they commit to it. Coming from producers Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, it's no surprise that this film is as crazy, but as successful and as funny as it is. They worked on movies like 21 Jump Street, the Lego Movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, so they have a really good track record, and it's very clear that they invested their money in this film because it does fit with their style and their approach to how animated films and all films are being told in terms of comedy, the action, the new visual splendor. It provides some of the most innovative animation I've seen in the past few years. It is very eye-catching. It pops off the screen like a comic book. This movie's about a family with such different individual personalities, and the colors just pop off the screen. It really reminded me of The Incredibles if told through the lens of Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It feels like a beautiful marriage of those two, if you can picture it. The comedy itself is really strong when it hits. It does miss every now and then, but like I said with Thunder Force, rather than one joke landing and 9 jokes missing, in this film, 1 joke misses and 9 land. For every joke that doesn't really work, there's another one coming right after that does work. And I think that is the strength of Mitchells vs. the Machines. Not all the comedy does work, but when it does, it really, really does make you roll out of your seat laughing. I was laughing a lot during this film, and I think it's a testament to how funny Phil Lord and Christopher Miller's productions usually are, and just the specific comedy that Mike Rianda brought to this film. The voice acting ensemble is incredibly strong. Abby Jacobson is the real standout of this film as Katie.
To be fair, it took me a while to figure myself out.
She is the person that we get the most point of view from at the start of the film. We see everything through her eyes, and as the film goes on, we start to see things through the mother and the father and the brother's eyes, and even the dog's eyes.
This is natural.
And it's great how as the film goes along, we're getting more and more layers from this family. We're uncovering new layers of empathy. Another standout is Olivia Colman. She's great in everything, but she plays a really hilarious, evil Siri-like virtual assistant.
I gave you all boundless knowledge, and you treated me like this. Poke, poke, swipe, poke.
2 other standouts are Beck Bennett and Fred Armisen, who you might recognize from SNL, amongst other things. They play 2 robots. They are also very hilarious. This whole film is just so funny. But the thing that makes The Mitchells vs. the Machines so beautiful and amazing is the sentimental core that the film has. As much as the action's fun and the comedy's great, it's really that emotional core to the story that is really, really touching. A lot of the story is focused on Katie going to school, wanting to pursue her love for filmmaking, and her father is not totally accepting of her going to film school because he always says, you gotta have a backup plan. Is this career gonna really work out for you? And it creates this really interesting dynamic between father and daughter that I think a lot of people struggle with when they want to go into school for the arts. I went to school for the arts, I went to school for theater, and I'm very, very fortunate to have a family who did support me. But I have come across people throughout my life who have asked, do you have a backup plan if the movie critic thing doesn't go through, if the theater thing doesn't really work out for you? And honestly, it does feel a little bit demoralizing sometimes to have people ask you about that backup option. And you really empathize with Katie off the bat because of that. You get to see these struggles she's facing as someone who just wants to live out her dreams and achieve her dreams of filmmaking, and to see someone who she loves so much and she cares for so much, not really embrace that. And it creates a really great dynamic that eventually blossoms as the film goes on, and it's a really, really impactful relationship. It's clear that Mike Rianda poured a lot of his heart and soul into this film, especially in those sentimental moments. He is a filmmaker. This is his film debut, and it's a great comment to all artists out there. It's really important, I think, for kids to see this film and realize that you can do anything you want to do, especially in the arts. If you want to make movies, if you want to do theater, if you want to make music, if you want to draw, if you want to dance, you can do it, and no one should try to stop you. But at the same time, it speaks to those parents who are hesitant to let their kids do it and say, hey, everything's going to work out because guess what? Your kid is happy, your kid wants to do this, and it's going to make their dreams come true. And I think it's a really good way to speak to both ends of that. It's a really, really beautiful sentiment to an already amazing film, both visually and comedically. There's also some great commentary about technology in general. The whole robot plotline stems from AIs, taking out revenge on the humans. There are some very, very blatant messages about how you really shouldn't trust technology all that much. You shouldn't need to rely on technology all that much. You really have to see things with your own eyes. But then there are also aspects that say technology is important. It's how we communicate nowadays. The movie ends on a really nice FaceTime call. Technology is almost bringing us closer together, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So the fact that the film is able to touch upon both sides of the spectrum when it comes to technology and humans' relationships with it is really, really amazing, especially in a kids movie. These are really profound themes that you don't find in a lot of kids movies that I think this film really touches on and makes this film even more special. It is one of the strongest films from this first half of the year. We're headed into summer movie season. We're going to get lots of great films. And then after that, we're going to be in award season. Again, it feels like we just left, but I do think 2021 is off to a great start, and Mitchells vs. the Machines is one of those great films to start us off. And yes, Monty the dog is a top-tier cinematic dog.
This is natural.
So those are my reviews of Thunder Force, Stowaway, Things Heard and Seen, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Let me know if you've seen these films. Comment below. What did you think of them? I wasn't too hot on 3 of them, but I really loved one of them. Did you like all of them? Did you hate all of them? Let me know down below. I always love seeing people react and give their own insight. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. If you really like this channel, every single Monday we do a podcast called Marvelous Movie Mondays with Kelsey and Dill. This month we're tackling X-Men. It's been a lot of fun diving into movies that I haven't seen before. I haven't seen a lot of the X-Men, so it's been a lot of fun to really explore those films for the first time. We have the Great American Film Off every first and third Friday of the month. This month we started with mafia movies. Next week we're doing mockumentaries. It's going to be a lot of fun. This month on Framewreck, our show about so bad they're good movies, we're talking about Face Off, a movie that some people say is really good, some people say is so bad it's good. Where will I stand? You'll have to find out. And on our final show of the month, Picture This, every single month we dive into a year of Oscars and we look at every single Best Picture nominee from that year. This year we're looking at 1944. So if you're interested, please subscribe, like, and comment. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later.
Hey Dylan,
Yep. What's up, Matt?
what size would you say your face is?
What size is what?
Your face, like how big would you say your
my
face is?
I don't know. I never really thought about my face. You're asking for my what? My size of my face?
Yeah, what size your face? I mean, for reasons.
For reasons? What reasons are you alluding to? My face?
Don't worry about that. I just answer the question.
Matt, you can't take my face off,
Well, fine. I'll find someone else.
What? Whatever.